Ella Fitzgerald landed at Paris Orly Airport on a gray February morning in 1948. She was 31 years old, internationally successful, and about to experience something she'd never felt in her entire life, being treated like a human being first and a black woman second. The difference would nearly break her heart. This is the story of 3 weeks that changed how Ella Fitzgerald understood herself and her country. Of the city where she could walk into the front entrance of hotels, of audiences who called her an artist without qualifiers, of the moment she realized the problem wasn't her, it was America, and of how hard it was to board the plane home. In 1948, Ella Fitzgerald was at a professional peak. The chick web days were behind her. She'd gone solo, made hit records, was earning good money. By any measure, she was successful. But success in America as a black performer came with constant reminders of your place. Ella knew the rules intimately because breaking them could be dangerous. Check which hotels accepted colored guests before booking, and even those often had inferior rooms, separate elevators, restricted hours. Use the back entrance even at venues where you were the headliner while white opening acts walked through the front. Eat in your dressing room because the restaurant wouldn't serve you, even though white patrons were dining on food prepared by black cooks. Don't make eye contact with white patrons. Don't complain when they seat you in the colored section at your own concert, rows away from the stage you'll be standing on. There were specific humiliations she'd never forgotten. Being refused a room at a Detroit hotel after a sold-out concert because they didn't accommodate Negroes, having to use a colored bathroom at a Texas venue that was literally a wooden outhouse behind the building while white performers used indoor facilities. Being stopped by police in the South and asked where she was going, why a colored woman was in a nice car, proof that she hadn't stolen it. She'd learned to swallow the humiliation, to smile professionally while being treated as less than human, to focus on the music and ignore everything else. To be grateful when white people were merely indifferent rather than actively hostile, but it accumulated, every colored entrance sign, every restaurant refusal. Every time a white performer with half her talent got better treatment simply because of skin color. Every show where she sang for segregated audiences, black people in the balcony, whites on the main floor. It settled into her bones this constant message that no matter how talented, how successful, how professional she was, America saw her skin color first and her humanity second. The European tour was Norman Granz's idea. He was managing Ella now, and he believed European audiences would appreciate her artistry without American racial baggage. They care about music, he'd told her, not about skin color. Ella had been skeptical. People are people everywhere, Norman, maybe. But let's find out, so she'd agreed. France, Belgium, Switzerland, England, 6 weeks performing for audiences who supposedly judged music rather than melanin. The airplane descended through clouds and Ella looked out at Paris spread below. Gray stone buildings, the Seine threading through the city, church spires reaching skyward. It looked old and elegant and completely foreign. When they landed, Ella's first test came immediately: customs and immigration. In America, even airports had separate lines sometimes, but here everyone queued together. The immigration officer looked at her passport, stamped it, said "Bienvenue en France, Mademoiselle Fitzgerald," with a smile, and waved her through. No suspicious questions, no extra scrutiny, just professional courtesy. Ella collected her luggage and walked through to the arrivals area where Norman was waiting with their local concert promoter, a Frenchman named Mitchell Laurent. Mademoiselle Fitzgerald. Mitchell greeted her warmly, kissing both her cheeks in the French style. "We are so honored to have you in Paris. Your music, it is magnifique." It was the first time a white man had touched her voluntarily in a gesture of respect rather than necessity. Ella tried not to show her shock. They took a taxi to the Hôtel Scribe near the Paris Opera, a nice hotel. In America, Ella knew they'd have to find a colored hotel or make special arrangements, but Norman had booked here directly. "Are you sure this is okay?" Ella asked quietly as they pulled up. Norman looked confused. "Why wouldn't it be?" "Norman, this is a white hotel." "Ella, this is Paris. It's just a hotel." She didn't believe it until they walked through the front entrance, not the service entrance, the front door, and approached the desk. The clerk greeted them in French, switched to English when Norman responded, and checked them in without hesitation. No questions, no problems. "No, I'm sorry, we don't have rooms available," that actually meant we don't serve colored. A bellhop took her bags. They rode the elevator to the 3rd floor. The clerk had given her a nice room overlooking the street. Ella stood in the hotel room after everyone left and tried to process what had just happened. She'd walked through the front entrance, been checked in like any other guest, given a nice room without negotiation or favors. It felt surreal, like a trick that would be revealed any moment. That evening, Mitchell took them to dinner at a restaurant near the hotel. A nice restaurant with white tablecloths and wine glasses and the kind of clientele that in America would mean Ella eating in her dressing room. They walked in the front entrance. The maitre d' greeted them warmly, didn't even blink at Ella's presence, and seated them at a good table by the window. Not hidden in the back, not near the kitchen. A good table where they could see and be seen. The waiter brought menus, took their orders, treated Ella with the same courtesy he showed Norman and Mitchell. When the food came, it was served properly, professionally, no different than any other table. Ella barely tasted her meal. She was too overwhelmed by the simple dignity of being served like a human being. "Is something wrong?" Mitchell asked, noticing her quietness. "No," Ella managed. "Everything is perfect. That's what's strange." Norman understood. He'd seen segregation's effects on his artists, but Mitchell looked confused. "Strange? But why strange?" "In America," Ella said carefully, "I wouldn't be allowed in this restaurant, or if I was, they'd make me use the back entrance and sit in a separate section." Mitchell's face showed genuine shock. "But you are Ella Fitzgerald. You great artist, doesn't matter, I'm colored, that's all they see. I cannot understand this," Mitchell said, clearly disturbed. "Here you are an artist, a musician, this is what matters. That word artist, not colored artist, not Negro singer, just artist." The next day Ella walked around Paris with Norman, just walked, no destination, just exploring. And she experienced something she'd never felt in America, anonymity mixed with respect. People looked at her because she was elegant, well-dressed, carrying herself with grace, not because of her skin color. When she passed other black people on the street, and there were some, mostly from French colonies, no one treated it as unusual or threatening. She could window shop without being followed by suspicious store clerks, could sit in a cafe without being refused service, could walk into a shop and have the salespeople treat her like any other customer. The revelation wasn't that Paris had no racism, it did, particularly toward North Africans. But the American system of rigid segregation, of systematic dehumanization, didn't exist here. Ella was judged as an individual, not as a representative of her entire race. Her first concert was at the Olympia Music Hall, one of Paris's premier venues. Backstage before the show, Ella prepared the same way she always did: vocal warm-ups, costume check, mental preparation. But there was one difference. In America, Ella was used to hearing audience chatter that included racial comments. "Let's see if the colored girl can really sing." "I've never seen a Negro performer before." Comments that made her artistry secondary to her skin color. Here, listening from backstage, the pre-show chatter was different. People discussing her records, comparing her to other jazz vocalists, talking about her technique, her range, her interpretive abilities. They were approaching her as a musician first. When she walked on stage, the applause was warm and genuine. The audience wasn't there to see a novelty or to feel progressive for attending a black performer's show. They were there to hear Ella Fitzgerald sing. She opened with a jazz standard, letting her voice fill the beautiful old theater. The audience response was immediate, not polite tolerance, but genuine appreciation. They understood what she was doing musically. They followed her improvisations. They recognized her artistry. Between songs, people shouted Magnifique and Brava. Ella realized they were responding to her music. Same passion they'd show any great performer, regardless of race. For the first time in her life, Ella felt seen as a musician rather than as a black musician. The difference was profound. In America, her race always came first. Critics would write the talented Negro vocalist or the colored songstress. Her blackness was always the primary descriptor, her artistry secondary. But here, reviews the next day described her as une grande artiste, une voix extraordinaire. The word noir appeared, but as a descriptor, not a qualifier. She wasn't a great black singer. She was a great singer who happened to be black. After the concert, fans waited at the stage door for autographs. They treated her with respect and enthusiasm, no different than they'd treat any beloved performer. No condescension, no surprise that she was talented. For a colored girl, just genuine appreciation. That night, back at the hotel, Ella stood at her window looking out at Paris. The city lights, the distant glow of the Eiffel Tower, the sounds of people living their lives below. For the first time in 31 years, she'd spent an entire day being treated as fully human. not as a black woman with all the limitations that imposed, just as Ella, an artist, a person. She started crying and couldn't stop. The tears weren't from sadness exactly. They were from finally understanding what she'd been missing her whole life, the simple dignity of being judged on her merit rather than her melanin, the basic humanity of walking through front doors, eating in nice restaurants, being called an artist without qualifiers. And underneath that relief was rage, rage at America for making her believe. This was impossible, for teaching her that discrimination was normal, for making her grateful for basic human decency as if it were a luxury rather than a right. The 3 weeks in Europe passed quickly. Each day brought new experiences of basic dignity that felt revolutionary. Ella performed in Belgium, Switzerland, back to France. Everywhere audiences appreciated her artistry. Everywhere hotels checked her in without hesitation. Everywhere she was treated like a human being first. She started to relax in ways she never had in America, walked with her head higher, laughed more easily, felt something unclench inside her that had been tight her entire life. Norman noticed the change. "You seem different," he said one evening. "I feel different," Ella admitted. "I feel like myself, like just Ella, not colored Ella or Negro. Ella, just me. You should feel like that always. I know, but I can't, not in America." As the tour neared its end, Ella started to dread going home, not because she didn't miss America, she did, but because she knew what awaited. The colored entrances, the restaurant refusals, the constant reminders that no matter her success, her humanity was conditional. The night before they were scheduled to fly back, Ella and Norman had dinner at a small bistro near the Seine. The waiter knew who she was, had attended her concert, treated her with warm familiarity. "Do we have to go back?" Ella asked quietly. Norman looked at her with understanding and sadness. "You know we do. I don't want to. I don't want to go back to colored entrances and being told where I can and can't eat. I don't want to go back to being less than human." "You were never less than human, Ella. I know that here. In Paris, I know that. But in America..." She paused. "In America, I forget, because they never let me forget I'm colored first. So we fight it. We use your platform to change things. I'm a singer, Norman, not a civil rights leader. You're both, whether you want to be or not." The flight home was quiet. Ella looked out the window as they flew over the Atlantic, watching Europe disappear behind them and knowing America waited ahead. They landed in New York. Immigration, customs, the familiar processes. But now, after 3 weeks away, Ella saw them differently. Saw the separate water fountains, the white and colored signs, the way officials treated black passengers with subtle contempt. It had always been there. She'd just learned to not see it, but Paris had lifted a veil and now she couldn't unsee it. The first day back, Ella and Norman went to lunch at a restaurant near her apartment. A nice place, but one that would serve her if she was with Norman. They were shown to a table near the kitchen, not near the window, not where white patrons dined, the colored section. The waiter took their order with barely concealed disdain. The food came eventually, but the service was deliberately slow, subtly hostile. Ella ate mechanically, remembering the Parisian bistro where the waiter had recognized her artistry and treated her with warmth, remembering being seated at a good table because she was a customer, not despite being black. "It's worse now," she said to Norman. "Coming back, it's worse because now I know it doesn't have to be this way." She was right. Paris hadn't solved racism for Ella Fitzgerald. It had done something harder, shown her what life could be like without it. And that knowledge made American segregation not just wrong but unbearable. In the years that followed, Ella toured Europe regularly. Paris became a refuge, a place where she could breathe freely. She'd arrive and feel that same sense of relief, walking through front entrances, being treated as an artist, existing as fully human. But she always had to return to America, to segregation, discrimination, the constant grinding erosion of dignity. In interviews later in life, when asked about Paris, Ella would get quiet. "It was the first place I felt like just me," she'd say. "Not colored me, just Ella, just a singer, just a person." "Did it change you?" interviewers would ask. "It broke my heart," Ella would answer honestly, "because it showed me what I was missing, what we were all missing, basic human dignity. And it made me angry that my own country couldn't give me what strangers in Paris offered freely." The 1948 Paris trip became a touchstone for Ella, a reminder that the problem wasn't her, that she deserved better, that the way America treated her wasn't normal or acceptable, it was wrong. She used that knowledge carefully. Ella was never a loud activist, that wasn't her temperament, but she quietly insisted on better treatment, refused segregated audiences when she could, demanded respect, used her platform to chip away at the system that had tried to diminish her. And she never forgot Paris, the city where she'd walked through front doors, where she'd been called an artist without qualifiers, where she'd felt human for the first time. Years later, France would award her the Légion d'honneur, their highest decoration. When she accepted it, elderly and frail, she cried, "This country gave me something precious," she said. "It gave me myself. It showed me I was worthy of dignity. And I've spent the rest of my life trying to claim that dignity at home." The award ceremony was in Paris. Ella walked through the front entrance.